Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Chad here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today, we've got another Gun Gripe episode for you, and we're going to be diving into the concept of, should you buy a Gucci carry gun? What's meant by that? Well, we're going to dive into this a little bit and have a chat and go over some of the finer points of both ends of the argument, if you will, and I think you'll come away from this one, hopefully with some fresh perspective on how we feel about it anyway. Before we get started, I would like to thank our friends at Firearms Legal Protection. They have some awesome prepaid legal service programs. If you are ever involved in a shooting, it's probably one of the scariest things you're ever going to experience in your life. And surviving the shooting is awesome, but then you have to survive all of the legal battle that's going to ensue over it. And to fight for your freedom, it's always a good idea to have good legal representation on hand. If you use the code IV8888, you can save yourself a decent chunk of money on all the packages that they offer. So check them out. Firearms Legal Protection, FLP. Tell them we sent you. Okay, so this whole Gucci gun thing, where this kind of comes from is, I know you've seen all the random Instagram and social media posts about all these fancy guns with really crazy finishes and all kind of crazy extra parts and lightning cuts and slide modifications and slide riding sights and all this random stuff that gets thrown on the gun. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having a really well-kitted gun in terms of having it set up the way you want. But I feel like there's kind of a paradigm there that exists between reliability and functionality and cool factor. And I guess we want to try to dissect where those things meet a little bit.
Yeah, so like where to begin? So the majority of people out there, they'll get like a basic gun, right? Because if you're first getting into concealed carry, well, you're going to go out and you're going to buy something like an M&P 9. You're going to buy a Glock 19 or something along those lines, right? And then over time, you might upgrade things, right? So the whole idea of like the Gucci guns is for the discerning buyer who initially has the funds to spend on a fully custom gun, more or less. I mean, they're basically the top of the heap as far as every modification that you could probably possibly do to a Glock or an M&P or other, like, say, polymer frame guns like the SIGs and such. It's already done from the factory.
Sure.
So there's 2 points, I guess, of contention, I guess you'd say. So number one is a factory gun. So, the old like myth that, okay, well, if you've got a gun that's highly modified, it could come back to bite you in court if you ever had to use it in a self-defense scenario, right? Because you made it more deadly, all this nonsense. Well, if it's a factory gun, I mean, it's a factory gun. It doesn't have any modifications, not technically. But you're also looking at a higher cost too, okay? If you modify your gun, you might have more cost overall down the line, by tinkering with parts and things like that. And you had mentioned the problem with tinkering with spring weights and different parts and components and things like that, and then running into reliability issues, having to figure out what the variable is and adding more, taking away this, and you wind up always kind of coming back to the beginning, back to the stock gun, and that's usually where most people wind up. I mean, anyways.
It's true. I mean, like, we did a video on the Zev OZ9, and that's kind of a little more in that Gucci gun territory where it's pretty much out-of-the-box, optics-ready, finely tuned and finely customized and finely refined, if that's a thing, I suppose. Yeah, finely refined, but a refined pistol that is more of a out-of-the-box, ready-to-go, upper-tier, well-kitted out type of a pistol. And that's all good and fine because I would definitely trust the people at Zev to do a great job, and then that pistol ran quite well. I think where people run into problems is by starting to throw a whole bunch of random parts on their gun, and you start changing the weight around, and especially on Glocks, they're notorious for, you change one little component, and sometimes it can just make the whole gun go to hell, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that that's intrinsically true all the time, but especially when you start adding compensators and additional weight onto the end of the barrel, Glocks tend to not like that. I mean, we've seen situations where Glocks don't suppress very well for the same reason. It just seems like across the board, they don't quite hold up to the mantra of reliability once you start throwing especially a heavier suppressor on the end of a Glock pistol. And then there's people that suppress their Glocks and they work just fine, and they have very rare, if any, issues at all. But there is a paradigm there between reliability and kitting a gun out with all kind of additional things. You start messing with aftermarket barrels, especially springs. When you start trying to respring the gun or put, lighter springs on the inside of the gun to try to lighten up the trigger pull, or to make the gun tuned to where it doesn't throw brass out super crazy, like it just barely poops the brass out. Maybe you're trying to shoot really fast splits in competition. Or maybe you're just trying to, save yourself a bit of that time on the shot splits for some other reason. Or maybe you're just trying to tune the gun to work the absolute best it can in terms of reliability, but also accuracy, right? By using an aftermarket barrel, you're trying to increase that accuracy. You're trying to win a match or whatever. That's all good and fine, right? But those are all situations that are probably a lot more tightly controlled, right? You're not fighting for your life in competition. You're fighting the timer, but you're not literally having to get in gunfights with the other competitors. That might be kind of weird, like kind of this weird gladiator thing going on, I suppose. Could be a model, maybe. But I digress. The point is, though, when it comes down to, strapping a gun on your hip and going about your everyday business, you certainly want to make sure that that's a tool that you can rely on. And the general consensus seems to be that the more parts you start changing around, the more variables that you're entering into, and that you're potentially changing a variable that is not going to swing the pendulum in the direction of reliability and more away from it. I guess that's kind of the overall gist there.
More or less.
Especially on Glocks.
Oh, yeah. So just for example, we've got a Glock 45 right here. And I want to show you guys something I learned a long time ago when I started working at Moss with Eric and all. So with Glocks, the springs that pretty much control like the trigger weight, the striker spring weight and everything like that, just the way the gun functions overall, they're quite important. You start lightening the springs up, as Eric mentioned, you run into a problem where the slide doesn't want to go into complete battery, okay, especially under the pressure of trying to get a new round out of the magazine and eject the spent case and such. But an easy way to tell if your Glock is sprung appropriately is just to make sure the pistol is unloaded, obviously, right? So bang. All right, hold the trigger and then retract the slide to the rear and then slowly let it forward. All right. You should be able to ride it all the way home back into full battery in a vertical position like this where it's kind of fighting gravity. Okay. If it just kind of stops right here, all right, just out of battery,
undersprung.
Then yeah, you're undersprung. And you need to work on maybe, if you lighten one spring, you need to make, like, say, the heavy or the striker spring a little bit heavier. But then you're in that balancing act of trying to find that perfect middle ground where everything functions correctly, and ultimately it could be a liability. But that's why the higher end guns, the companies have sort of taken all that. All that work out of the equation, and they've already done it for you, and they're providing you with hopefully a product that you could bet your life on. I mean, let's see, like agencies, Zev.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like Wilson.
Agencies MMPs are amazing.
They are. I mean, but it, some of the companies like previously, Robar. Okay, which unfortunately they're not in business any longer, not doing the customization like they used to, obviously. But you could take a Glock or any polymer frame gun, or really any metal frame gun, anything, and send it to Robar for like a full customization package. And their gunsmiths were incredible over there. We had some Glocks done. Brandy's High Power was done over there. I mean, and they're literally functional works of art. But they're in that same sort of Gucci category at that point because, I mean, it's a lot of specialized equipment that it takes to do that job, specialized coatings, special knowledge, and just, I guess just the ultimate like expertise of what to do to that gun to get it to its peak performance.
Well, I mean, when you get into, people like Robar, Agency, you look at Zev, you look at Wilson Combat, all those guys that are doing, sort of these prosumer to professional, Turan, all the work he does
Turan,
on shotguns. Yep. I mean, so like when you look at what all these people are doing, they're doing it at a functional art level where everything they're doing is with a purpose. Like all their guns are built with a purpose, and they're built, they're not going to introduce a variable that's going to cause the gun to not work as well as a factory gun. And if anything, it's going to enhance the functionality of the pistol or shotgun or rifle. I mean, like Wilson's stuff is amazing. I love their frames. The P320/M17, they've also got some short and longer frames for the M18 as well if you want to run something like that. But the Wilsons are cool. So like if you have a stock M17 or a P320, you can actually drop their grip stick on there, and the reliability of the gun changes not at all. It literally is just the grip module that you change out. And we found from running those, that gives you a lot of enhanced capability for the pistol without having to really change a whole lot at all. So with technology like the P365 and the P320 from SIG, with that chassis style trigger system that you can just drop into anything, that's where you get into the Flux Raider, where if you've got a 320 sitting around you're not using, you can add a lot of functionality to that pistol. And those are considered functional and easy to do enhancements that really don't require any, it's literally just changing out a part. It's nothing more, and a completely normal thing to do. But Wilson's done a great job too by offering complete carry packages around the 320. Just like, I mean, obviously you look at the work that agency's doing, they do a lot of stuff with Glocks, but I feel like their M&P is really where they shine. If you're going to get an M&P, the agencies are awesome if you're wanting to get into that Gucci territory. I mean, you can always go full staccato. Now, the staccato pistols are amazing. Now, I don't know if a staccato would be my choice for, bumping down the road going to the grocery store. But, it's more of a competition pistol. But of course, the carry and the competition world blend quite often.
They do.
And the functionality that people want to have in the pistol, the upgrades that people want to make in a particular, especially handgun. Some of those things mirror each other, right? Some people on a carry gun want that large extended well to get the mag changes a little bit better. That could be a functional upgrade that would transfer not only to concealed carry and just carrying the pistol for everyday use, but also for competition. Things like weighted base pads, right, to help the empties get out a little bit better so that even an empty mag has some additional weight. That is totally something that could transfer over to the concealed carry route. Having an empty magazine that's a few ounces heavier, it'll make the gun a little heavier, but also an empty mag, it's going to have that little bit of extra weight. That's actually a trick that I learned from Jerry Mitchell. So just to pass along, right? He likes to weigh down his magazines a little bit so that even when they're empty, they're always going to have that bit of extra weight to clear the gun if he's actually dropping an empty mag out of a pistol rather than doing an active reload where, there may be a few rounds left in the magazine, but as you're transitioning, you swap magazines so that when you get where you're going, you're going to have a full mag, that sort of thing. But beyond that, little tiny things like that can make a little bit of a difference, but not change the core functionality of the pistol. You could take a stock pistol and use a slightly heavier mag and know that when you eject that magazine, that mag is going to have a little more weight to get out of there. Especially on a Glock mag, they're kind of light. Some people maybe want a little bit more weight. That's why I do like the Turan extensions, especially on the M&Ps, because it does provide a little bit of extra weight so those empties can clear.
All right, so I've got one more point I want to make, and then we can move on
Sure.
to another interesting talking point.
Okay.
All right, so when you're talking about like Gucciing out a gun, all right, you mentioned like compensators, red dot sights, flashlights, even like accessories and such, lights, lasers. All that's fine and dandy, and it does increase the functionality of, like, say, quicker follow-up shots. Because like Jerry does, he weights his guns down and he runs like a heavy flashlight up front to help keep that muzzle flip down. All right, so that equates to faster follow-up shots. So the same could be said in a carry gun. All right, you want the flashlight not only for illuminating your target at night, whatever, and identifying targets in that sort of environment in a self-defense scenario, but it also does help with recoil management. Right? But it's more to carry. Okay, so you're having to use maybe more specialized in the waistband holsters if you're carrying concealed in the waistband, like especially appendix. The more you put on the gun, the less comfort that you're going to have. I mean, let's face it. I mean, carry guns are comforting, not comfortable typically, but I mean, we don't want a brick, sticking out of the front of our pants, right? Okay, you want to be comfortable during the day. So all those are kind of points to think about, but with all those extra parts comes the extra variables, right? So it's just like anything else. you need to get out there and test the gun, make sure everything's going to function properly. And what I've seen as far as like a good proving ground is the competitive arena, like IDPA, for example, because most of the guns that are used there are pretty basic, firearms. I mean, you and I have done a couple of them in the past before when we had extra time and such, but I don't know what that is anymore. But But most of the guns there, they're either going to work or they're not, and you're going to be able to identify problems quite quickly. And it's a fast-paced, competitive environment, and you're doing a lot of moving and shooting and such, and you can tell what's going to work and what's not. So
that's true. I mean, competition is definitely the proving ground of many designs. So, like, if you want to know if your Gucci build is going to be perfect, well, then take it out and compete with it, because, believe me, it will bring out the gremlins in the system, whether it's by virtue of some odd position you're having to make. And you know what? Maybe you never tested the gun at a slight angle or to the side or, whatever. Right, or with a little bit of an introduction of dirt and debris and other things, or getting ran a lot and getting real dirty. Maybe you don't have time to clean as often. Can it handle getting dirty? Can it handle getting some crap in it? Can it handle various types of ammo of different power levels and different quality? All of those things are a point of contention that I think is probably pretty important to consider when you get into the way the military develops new gun designs and develops new technologies or introduces new technologies into their environment, because, the military is a microcosm of civilian society, really. They look pretty hard at the competition world, right? Like the Army Marksmanship Unit. Yeah, they train, but they also get out and compete, right? So that's a proving grounds for technologies, for cartridges, all sorts of things that they may be considering. Or maybe you want to field a very small change to a proven system. Competition can be a way that you can kind of vet that change and know if it's going to work out. And even beyond that, beyond competition, just getting out and shooting. Don't make a change to something and go, all right, cool, this recoil spring's great, I love it, feels great, and then throw the gun on your hip and go. No, I mean, put some rounds through it, check it, make sure it's gonna work. Take your favorite carry ammo that you're gonna trust your life to, and you know what? You need to buy enough of it to where if you make a change, you need to go out and make sure it's going to run your favorite carry ammo. It might run great with ball, and then you switch to the ammo that you're going to use to carry it, and all of a sudden there might be some little tiny gremlin rears its head. So you don't want something that you're approaching as a benefit to end up being a liability because you didn't really vet the change that you made properly, or vetted the change in the wrong, did too many changes at once, and now, all right, there's an issue the gun's having. Well, what change was it? Was it the recoil spring? Was it some fancy extractor? Was it a cut on a slide? Was it adding the slide riding optic? Was it adding the flashlight? Was it adding an aftermarket slide? What was it? Who knows? Because you've introduced so many variables, how can you know which one is causing the problems?
That's go back
where the issue.
Yep. You got to go back to the drawing board and start over from scratch, pretty much.
That's right.
There was a story. Well, it was sort of like maybe an Instagram post or something I read a little while back. I really can't recall. I don't even remember who the trainer was, but it was a trainer discussing a guy that came to his class multiple times. And this is another thing too. I mean, firearms training, like concealed carry training and whatever, is a place where you can vet your equipment. I mean, for real, right? But this guy was like, I don't know, he had maybe a Gucci type gun or something, or he made some modifications and such, but he came out there and, it was like, is that gun going to work? It's like, oh yeah, it works great. It didn't, right? So he came back a second time. It's like, hey, I fixed it. Still didn't work. Third time, hey, I think I fixed it this time. I put a lot of rounds through it and it still failed, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, at what point do you just say, you know what, maybe I just need to go back stock and just stay that way?
Sometimes it's important to know when to walk away.
Yes. But I will say, like, most of the guns that I carry on a regular basis, my Robar 43, obviously, it's had Robar treatment done to it. But I carry a Glock 19 with, like, literally the only modification is a set of night sights and a Ghost, I think, patrol trigger connector in it. So it's like a 4.5 pound connector.
Yeah, you don't want to go lighter than that.
No, it's a really great take up, release, over travel. I mean, it checks all the boxes without adding that variable of less reliability to it. I mean, I can count on one hand how many times I've had a problem with that gun, and it's had thousands upon thousands of rounds through it. But I like to keep things simple. That's just me. But so what about the Gucci gun attitude? Like the elitist like mindset when it comes to that. I mean, you've kind of got it on both sides. You've got people on the bottom end, okay, the bottom of the totem pole, who can get like kind of the bottom of the barrel guns. All right, like Barry used to say. I mean, a high point on your hip is better than a Glock on layaway, right?
This is true.
You've got folks that look up at these guns like, oh, I would never buy anything like that. That thing's way too fancy, blah, 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 And then you've got the folks on the top end that look down and like, this is the only gun that I would ever buy. Like, even if I had to save up for 3 years, this is the only thing I'm ever going to have. And
yeah, the kind of person who's only ever going to carry an HK VP9 package, that's
or whatever.
fancy.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
I mean, look, some people like the higher end stuff because with those higher end brands come not only a higher price, but also, a bigger reputation to uphold. I mean, HK has been known, for having a very high quality product that they offer. For the past several decades, right? And they've had law enforcement, military contracts all over the world. So, yeah, Glock's the same way. I'd want to bet my life on something that had that sort of reputation.
Of course.
But there are those people that kind of look down or they look up to a certain degree with negativity, at folks that like the Gucci guns or like just the simple type guns. And
at the end of the day, you're either a master of your tool or you're not. So it doesn't matter how cheap or expensive a given tool is. Someone who's a master of their trade should be able to take any tool and use it to its fullest extent, no matter how fancy or basic it might be. And I think those are like kind of the building blocks of skill sets, right? If I can take the most basic tool and perform the task that I need to perform, then I know that if I have an enhanced tool, then I can do that much better. So I think that starting at a real basic point and working your way up and understanding the limitations of gear, how can you possibly know what you're actually changing if there's no basis there to back it up? Mm-hmm. Now, to say that, someone who has a pile of money and wants to buy a fancy Gucci gun right out the box, awesome. Absolutely. There are plenty of carry options out there. I guess a good way to sort of segue out of this video would be, all right, what would be, okay, so 2 things. If you could have any Gucci gun and bet your life to it, what would it be? And if you could have only a super basic gun, like what would be your choice for a basic pistol that would be an out-of-the-box gun that outside of, let's say, maybe pushing some night sights on it or something? Because most people will say, yeah, I like a Glock 19 that's stock, but with maybe a nice set of night sights. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a great choice. What would be your choice?
I'd say Glock because that's what I've used over the years. But to cover all the bases, if I wanted to throw a suppressor on it and it be 100% reliable, a CZ75 all day long. I can't say that I've ever shot a CZ75, just even a base model, that didn't work out of the box 110% with whatever I put in it or whatever I put on it.
Interesting choice. Now, what about a fancy pants gun?
A fancy pants gun? That's tough because, honestly, I don't even know what's out there anymore. You
like that Zev.
Yeah, the Zev is
the
nice.
OZ9, that's kind of Glockish.
I don't know.
Is that a word?
Glockish?
Glockish?
It's like, well, at what point does it not become a Glock anymore? Just because it doesn't say Glock on it. It's still it's literally still a Glock. I don't know.
Well, I think my answer would be that in terms of stock pistols out of the box, I've really been digging the SIG M17. I like it a lot. It's got a great trigger, very, very functional piece of gear, accurate. I can shoot it well. I can draw it, manipulate it. I've got plenty of mags. It's been bone reliable. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that the SIGs have not been without their teething issues.
That's why I didn't
being
choose
dropped
that.
and discharging. And there was some of the P365s early on had an issue with the striker dragging and causing this weird kind of issue. And so Tim at Military Arms Channel sort of discovered that, and many of us were able to replicate that. But SIG worked that out, and since have gotten that straightened out. I am a big fan of the P365 in terms of a small compact carry gun. I like it as an out-of-the-box pistol. No red dot sights or any of that crap. Look, that's fine. If that's your thing, do you. I'm kind of an iron sight sort of guy. But the Micro Romeo, the little sight that they make that is kind of goes with that gun is great. I have shot them. They are nice. For those of you that want to go that route, you can. And I like the M17. And look, I'm going to go full bore here and say that if I had to choose an out-of-the-box Gucci gun, if you will, to trust my life to and know that it was going to be 110% reliable, I would either buy an agency M&P package, which is one of the best M&Ps I've ever shot in my life. When they came down to the farm and brought some out, and I was just absolutely blown away at the quality of the work. They're great and accurate as can be. Or I would go with Wilson and get the Wilson Combat 320 package. And that gun is outstanding. It's got their slide, their grip module, their trigger shoe, and some of their enhancements and refinements. And it is a fantastic piece of gear. I don't have one of those pistols. However, I do have one on the way. So we will have a video coming out on that one soon. And my current M17 is wearing the Wilson aftermarket grip stick with their really nice texture. And it's just a very nice setup overall. I really do like the Wilson combat stuff. And you ordered a 300 hammer upper, didn't you, from Wilson?
No, I ordered a barrel.
So,
yeah, just to play around with.
So that's something that in the future with Wilson, just while we're on that subject, that'll be something cool to check out. It's kind of like 300 Blackout on steroids.
Sort of. It's like, it's 300 Blackout supers, pretty much. It's only supersonic, right? But
Right.
So it's a 5.56 case that's shortened ever so slightly and necked up, but you get more powder than a supersonic 300 Blackout and anywhere between about like 200 and 400 feet per second extra, depending on the barrel length.
That'd be something cool to play around with. So. ARs are like the Legos. Now, I know we've really spent more time, Chad, kind of talking about carry guns and pistols. These same principles obviously still apply to shotguns and rifles and other platforms. You start changing a whole bunch of crap on your AR and stuff starts going south if you don't change the right stuff in the right way. So, there is a fine line between something you view as an upgrade and if it really is an upgrade. And practice versus form. Form and function are not always the same things.
Yeah. Just something that came to mind when you mentioned like rifles and shotguns and such is thinking about like ARs. I'll just mention this real quick, just a thought. But how I mentioned early on, like talking about getting a basic like Glock or M&P or whatever and upgrading it over time and finding any problems, anything like that. Same thing can be said for ARs, right? You get a basic AR and you start upgrading it over time. You maybe change the gas system or maybe put a low-profile gas block on it or something, switch to like a superlative piston, things like that. Depending on the cartridge that I've used over the years, I've found some minor issues with buffer weight, buffer spring type, the gas system type, especially if you're running like +1 or +2 systems for something like the 6AR, 6 ARC, 22 Grendel, some of these wild things that are out there, you always run into these weird problems. But like, the Gucci stuff, like HK 416s, right? SR15s from Knights. JPs.
I mean, those guns are bullet delivery devices. I mean, like JP makes awesome guns. Awesome guns. But it's a different thing. Like it's a thing. It's a tuned, very, very precise system.
They're not exactly carry guns, but they are guns that you could, in theory, defend your life with and depend on. But with the higher end like Gucci ARs and stuff comes the higher price, and a lot of those guns like have very proprietary systems, that they incorporate on that. Like literally, that company is the only place you can get those particular components from. Just like some of the Gucci handgun manufacturers.
It wasn't necessarily meant to be part of this video, but since we're on the subject, we might as well say, okay, so out of the box AR, basic AR. What would be your go-to out-of-the-box basic AR that you would trust your life to? And what would be, if let's just say, a upper tier or even if it's not like a JP or something Gucci, but
this I can answer.
A rifle that you can trust your life to that is an upper tier and something more entry-level.
So
what would be your choice?
I feel like I can answer this question a lot
better
too. Because I've had, number one, I've had more experience, hands-on experience with a lot of these guns. So basic AR, Smith & Wesson, just a normal M&P 15. bare bones M&P 15 with a flat top on it, throw a good red dot on it, be done with it.
Hard to beat. Hard to beat.
And
I mean, in our testing, they've held up so well. It is freakish how good of a gun Smith & Wesson makes for the money. That is just objectively a true statement. Like, they are great.
Yeah, it's a very high quality gun. Now, like upper tier AR, I'd go with a KAC, with a Knights, because like, look, they've got
like spending money.
All right, I will say that out of the box, the SR15 and the SR25s, they are arguably the smoothest and most accurate ARs I've ever shot right out of the box. Like, the SR15 has like a proprietary gas system. It's got a proprietary gas system length. It's kind of in between a mid-length and a rifle length on a 16-inch carbine, but just so soft shooting. I mean, and highly accurate. I mean, my buddy, his SR25, he had a 14.5-inch 308 we took out and shot, and I shot numerous like quarter and half MOA groups with that thing with 175 grain Match Kings. And we were getting ready for a match a while back down at Arena. And
stupid accurate.
Very. I mean, they're expensive. I mean, like SR25, some of those uppers cost as much as like a Gucci AR does, right? And the lowers go for just stupid amounts of money. But just out of the box, the SR15 is probably one of the best ARs I have ever, had my hands on. Like, literally just 100% bone stock.
That's a heck of a choice. I would say that I agree with you on the basic gun. M&P, by far, the M&P Sport is definitely an impossible entry-level gun to beat for those who want a good, reliable gun but don't want to have to spend a lot of money on the get-go. But I would say on the upper end, I've become quite partial to LMT. And for a 16-inch gun, I really do like their piston systems. And they do have Nibix piston systems, which run really clean, and they're very accurate. I love them. They're fantastic. And I will say, I really do like the Geisley Super Duty pistol, the 12.5, I believe it's a 12.5-inch barrel on that Super Duty. And of course, the Mark 18 is a great system. I like Daniel Defense quite a bit. Daniel Defense does win a few points in my book because of their exceptional warranty. Also, their manufacturing process is pretty freaking stringent, and I really do like the hammer forged barrels that they use. They're very accurate, and they're very rigid, and it's just a great barrel that Daniel Defense uses in their various guns. So I know that's a multi-tier. It's a multi-tiered answer.
That's three.
That's a multi-tiered answer. But I would feel equally armed and dangerous with LMT, Geisley, Daniel Defense. I mean, anything from Noveske. I mean, look.
You got it. Look, you have to choose one.
I can't. All right. If it's a piston gun, give me an LMT.
No, there's no options. There's only one gun. You have to. I chose one. Look, I was able to choose one this time.
All right, look, give me Mark 18 and be done with it.
Okay, there you go.
Give me Mark 18 and be done with it.
Admirable choice.
Throw a sling on it, maybe a can if that's your flavor, a good red dot, maybe a magnifier, D-ball if you wish, and move on with life. It's pretty much a adequate and capable tool that is ready to use out of the box.
Yep. No, sorry guys, I wasn't really.
Now, they do represent.
They do.
A higher cost.
It's a higher cost.
You're going to spend almost 3 times as much as an M&P.
I wish I could answer, the carry gun question, but I just really haven't had that much experience with the higher end guns, aside from like the Zev that we've done video on, and then the agency and such, the M&P and whatnot. But
since we posed the question for pistols and rifles, I feel like we're kind of obligated to talk about shotguns quickly. All right.
Oh, here we go.
All right. So what would be entry level shotgun you can protect yourself with? And then a Gucci shotgun that you could protect yourself with. And I think I already know the answer, but I'll let you. Yeah.
I mean, in recent years, as many of them as we sold at Moss and such, and as much as we've shot them, just a old no nonsense Mossberg, like one of the what is the baseline model called that we sold so many of? Not the 500, but the. They
used to have a gun that they made with wood furniture and a jewel bolt that they called Crown Grade. And on the box, it would have like a Crown logo. It would say Crown Grade.
Crown
Grade.
Okay.
And they had jeweled bolts. And in terms of the configuration of the gun, they were relatively basic. Mm-hmm. But man, you want to talk about smooth as butter. Like they had gone through, and I'm pretty sure they called them Crown Grade guns because Mossberg's logo is a crown. Mm-hmm. You ever notice, right? And the bolts were jeweled. and the wood furniture maybe was a little nicer than your run-of-the-mill 500. And those guns were fantastic. And for just a good pump-action shotgun that can deliver the goods, a basic entry-level option.
Maverick 88.
Totally
That's what I was thinking
fine.
about.
Totally fine.
Now, like back in the day, I lucked up at Moss and picked up my Browning BPS for about the same money as an 88. I mean, wasn't very much more at the time, and that's arguably one of the best and smoothest shotguns I ever shot. But it loses points because of parts availability and such. It's not quite as common. But a Maverick 88 is one of the better entry-level shotguns that you can bet your life on.
I think if you're going to pinch $200 on a shotgun, it'd be impossible to beat a Maverick. I mean, they do hold up quite well. Watch those polymer trigger guards. That if you drop the gun, it's probably gonna break. Okay, I mean, it is what it is. And there are some components that are not quite as well in terms of the quality, but overall, for a gun that you're just going to protect yourself with, it's a nice option.
Well,
so what would be your Gucci setup for a shotgun?
Gucci shotgun? I mean, God, probably just a Benelli M4, man. I mean, it's kind of hard to beat that choice.
Hard gun to beat.
I mean,
okay, I'm going to surprise y'all here. So my entry-level sort of basic shotgun, if I could only have one shotgun, and let's just say pumper semi is irrelevant, I like the Remington 870 Marine Magnum. I like that finish. Holds up well. It's impervious to rust. The guns are functional. Hold a decent amount of shells. Robust. Reliable. Proven. 870.
I'd say that's a mid-grade gun. Not really entry level.
Okay. Well, if we're saying straight up entry level, then I'm going to have to agree with you on the Mossberg 500 or 88. If I could buy an super entry level pump shotgun, 88.
Oh wait, so we have let's see, super entry level, mid-grade.
Okay. All right, look.
Here we go.
All right, look. To Chad's credit, what he's saying is like an 88 is like a $200 to $250 shotgun.
Yeah.
Whereby a Marine Magnum and an 870 is probably getting you up closer to around 6 or 8, depending on where you buy it. So that is a pretty big cost difference. However, okay, now if I could choose a Gucci shotgun.
All right, here we go. I'm curious.
I would buy the M2 Tactical that's been gone through and set up by Taran Butler.
Okay.
The Taran Butler M2 package would be my go-to. And here's part of my reasoning. One is the M2 Field is one of the most famous Benelli shotguns there is, and there's more M2 Fields that have been heavily modified for competition out there on the competition circuit than any other gun, right? You don't run into the difference in the operating system as you would see on the M3 and M4, although the M3 is very much an outlier. The M2 is a proven system. It's clean, it's reliable, and of course, Taran's upgrades are very, very well merited, and he does such great work on a shotgun. So if I could have any combat shotgun and money was not an option, it would most certainly be the Taran M2. And they're nice.
Oh, yeah.
I've never owned one. I have shot them, and they are amazing.
They're slick.
They are slick. And Taran knows what he's doing around guns. He knows how to put together a nice gun.
Would you run the field length, or would you run like the 18.5 inch, like normal combat style?
Well,
see, and would it be pistol grip or Monte Carlo?
Oh, Monte
style?
Carlo, yeah, okay. Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of pistol grips anymore, although they do have their use. But, it's funny you mention that because one of my favorite shotguns is my 26-inch long Black Eagle, all right? And, of course, it's a big old long, ungainly shotgun. And you would think, wow, that's hard to maneuver. Like, people will say, well, if you're running through your house, try running through a house with a long shotgun and see how well you fare. It's really not a big deal. You just got to be mindful of the muzzle. Mm-hmm. If you're going through a doorway, just tilt it up. You know what I mean? But that's any shotgun. Even an 18-inch gun can still be an obstruction going through a doorway. You still have to manage the gun a little bit. So, and I think it all really depends on where you live and the kind of situations you might run into. Like, I'm out in the sticks, so, I could shoot slugs 150 yards in my front yard. Not everyone is in a situation where they may need to do that. An 18-inch gun is perfectly adequate, but I do like a 26-inch gun with the Nordic Components extension because I can fit 14 rounds of ammo in the gun. So it's basically get a New York reload on tap as a part of the gun. So I'd rather have the longer barrel and have the extra capacity.
See, with that longer barrel, you're all that much closer to your target anyways.
That's right. You know, because I'm a no shooting, you know what. But
that's why you need all that ammo.
Well, I mean, you'd rather have it and not need it. But the point is, though, no matter what you wind up running, whether it's basic or whether it's a Gucci gun, vet that gun, any changes you make to that gun, and vet the people who build those guns. If you're going to buy an out-of-the-box Gucci gun, a Wilson, Turan, Agency, you name it. There's tons of great people out there. Zev. I mean, shout outs to all these people because they're such talented dudes, what they do. And ladies. The lady that used to do the gunsmithing work over at Robar on High Powers is really cool. And I don't know the name of her company off the top of my head, but she actually still does high power customization. I'll put a screenshot here. You can follow her on Instagram. Her high power builds are amazing, and you should certainly check them out. But anyway, I think we covered the bases quite well. Maybe so. in a way we weren't planning on doing, but I'm glad we went down that rabbit hole.
I mean, most of the people watching have been here before, and they know we go off on wild tangents sometimes. And these episodes are very much unscripted. Yeah. And like we come up with an idea, I write it down, and we say, well, all right, hit record, let's go.
Yeah, but sometimes that's fun though. I mean,
it is.
We're not saying that Gucci guns aren't awesome. They are. If you want the best crazy thing you can get, absolutely do whatever you want to do, whatever makes you happy. All we're saying is don't put yourself in a dangerous situation where it could potentially mean life and death without knowing 110% that tool is something that you can trust without question. Right? Don't be that guy that he talked about that went to the gun class 3 times in a row, and every single time that gun that he said, oh, it's perfect, it's fine, and then had nothing but problems. Getting in the middle of a gunfight is not the time that you want to have a problem. Oh, my spring was too light. Well, the bad guy ain't going to take a second to let you trade out for something else. I mean, that's it. Once that path is laid, you're traveling down that path whether you like it or not. And that's not a situation. I mean, a situation involving personal defense is a chaotic situation to begin with already. You definitely don't want to add more variables into that chaos by having a gun that doesn't work when you need it to. That's all we're saying. So.
Yeah. Well, like at the end of the day, if you're carrying whichever gun, doesn't matter. If you run out of ammo, it becomes a melee weapon, right?
Yeah. Well, there are things called magazines, and we take the empty magazines out and we replace them with full magazines.
Well, see, what if you're one of those guys who just carries one single magazine? Because, you're not going to need more than 15 rounds, right?
Or what if I'm the kind of guy that carries a 33-round Glock mag on my hip, and then that's it? It's just like I got 33 rounds on tap.
Man, how do you conceal that thing? Like you're walking through Walmart or something?
Big baggy britches, man.
Big baggy britches?
Yeah. Yeah. And a big old sweatshirt, you pop it.
All right.
Nobody knows.
Pop it.
Yeah, just pop it.
Pop it.
Pop it. Go. Look, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Maybe we provided some perspective that maybe you had not considered before. And look, we're not saying don't buy a Gucci gun. Buy all the Gucci guns you want. But we're just saying understand all of the gravity and ramifications of your choice. That they can have far-reaching implications if you're not careful. So just keep that in mind. Big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for supporting what we do. Thank y'all very much. Go over to Ballistic Ink and pick yourself up a snazzy new t-shirt. That's one way you can support our effort. So thank you for being a part of what we do. Have yourselves a great week. Many more gun gripes on the way. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you on the flip side.
We'll be seeing you.